Well, welcome everybody back to Unbroken Veterans. Today we have Mike Hudson here with ClearForce. Um, and if you just want to start us out, Mike, and just kind of give us a little background on yourself and then how you got into ClearForce, and we'll just kind of go from there.
No, that sounds great. Hey, first off, really do appreciate the work that you're doing writ large. I had a chance to listen to some of your other podcasts, and I encourage and share with other veterans out there. This is a good place to get some ground zero truth and to get some good ideas. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show as well. Hey, so my background, a veteran as well, but my journey kind of started in law enforcement way back in the day. I'm not going to put a date to that because I don't think you were both born yet. But so I was working for San Mateo County out in San Francisco area while I was going to finish up college. I was leaning into law enforcement, but then the Marine Corps made me that offer you can't refuse. So then I ended up flying helicopters for the Marine Corps, retired in 2014 as a colonel, had an opportunity to command a helicopter squadron. I flew the CH-46 Sea Knight. You guys would recognize it as a small version of your Chinooks. Yeah, both made by Boeing. And they had an opportunity to command a squadron, did a tour in tanks as a forward air controller. So that was really cool. You know, when I wasn't flying, I could drive around in an M1A1, a 72-ton tank. Super impressive. Good fun doing that, doing with the grunts. And then went on to do standard staff tours you'd expect, flight instructor tour. Finished up, MU commander, Marine Expeditionary Unit commander, 3 combat tours. All of those are in Iraq battle space. And then as a MU commander, we did some counterterrorism, counter-piracy stuff in and around CENTCOM, PACOM, and AFRICOM's battle space. I finished up in the Marine Corps, which was really kind of a weird thing because I was mostly an operator or had intel training. But at the time, the commandant said, "Hey, Mike, call sign Hudman, we need some help here in getting at sexual assault prevention and suicide prevention." So we didn't want a staff officer. We wanted a combat veteran, a combat leader, and that's you. So here's this tasking. So caught off guard, found myself, at Quantico, working in the Pentagon and working down at Quantico. But really great team of Marines as well as some sailors tossed in there, and really some super sharp civilian subject matter experts. And we worked with Dr. Keita Franklin. I'll give her a shout out. She went on to be the head of suicide prevention for the Department of Defense. She went on then to run suicide prevention for the Department of Veterans Affairs. She's really sharp. She advises ClearForce, and we'll lean into that in a second. But really kind of put me on this trajectory. Working, and answering that question that we've all answered is like, why do Marines, sailors, airmen do a bad thing, especially do a bad thing to someone they serve with? So what we found there was we needed a way to empower leaders to pick up on individuals who were struggling. We needed a way to deploy resources sooner. And our current models of annual training, awareness campaigns, that's not going to get it done, right? You guys probably been to a ton of training.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. You may walk out of there a little bit smarter. The efficacy of that might last for, a few hours, but it's not the way to get there. I mean, even if we change one PowerPoint slide for another PowerPoint slide, information exchange, that's an important component. But what we found was if you really want to energize your program, you got to get your leaders, not just your officers, but your staff NCOs. They need to be engaged, and they need to have a way to understand who within the organization is struggling. We used to do that. We all lived on base, lived in, small space. You were always in everybody's business. Nowadays, you work on base and then you live out in town. And so we tended, and this is a challenge for veterans. We can get to that here in a bit. But so that put me on this trajectory. Very fortunate that I did some think tank work coming right out of the Marine Corps. I worked in the healthcare space as a chief of staff for an organization that was doing some reorg. They needed, again, some leadership acumen. I had a little bit of that, so I tossed that in there. But then I got vectored into General James Jones. He was coming out of the Marine Corps, went on to be the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, and then finished up his tour to being President Obama's National Security Advisor. He has a company, Jones Group International. They're still active, still doing some really good work. I support them, and some of you keep my left military brain engaged. But they formed a company called ClearForce. And so I was on the ground floor of this organization. It was really designed to get at people risk. And so as I led with, they looked at this problem of insider threat. They looked at this problem of risk in the workspace, and everybody seemed to be talking cyber. And General Jones and looked at that with a really good board. You can go to clearforce.com and see there's some really varsity athletes on the board here from both inside the government and out. And they looked at us and said, we got to focus on the people. And if we start focusing on the people, we're all of a sudden going to find that we're no longer playing defense like my kung fu is better than yours when it comes to cyber. We're going to find people who are struggling, and we're going to be able to sit there and deploy resources sooner. Now we're having a mitigation conversation. I mean, back then, about 8 years ago when we came into market, people were looking to go, I have a really good tool to find a nail so you can deploy your hammer. We looked at that and says, hey, if you want to move left, let's change that whole conversation. So what ClearForce is, I mean, it's We developed some patent pending technology. We identify potential threats within the workspace, but really what makes us different is we're a compliance company. We built out this really cool compliance, privacy, anonymization technology that really allows us to work with this concept of trust. So organizations that deploy our technology within their workspace are having really good outcomes, both inside the government and out. And we have a ton of fun doing it. So let me pause here. I think I just rattled off a full belt of 556.
No,
That's what we want.
yeah. And so I think earlier you were saying it's still kind of in the beta right now.
Yeah. So, well, ClearForce, that really good distinction. I know we were shooting the breeze here just before we went live, but
Yeah.
yeah. So ClearForce is deployed today. Think
Oh,
about us like dual use technology. We are deployed in the federal government, supporting insider threat and risk programs within the government today. We are also in a commercial space, supporting Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies today. So we have a fully up and running business, all good, making some money. But what we're doing now is we're moving into that same technology. We're putting it in the suicide space. So the
okay.
ideas I led earlier, if you pick up on early risk signals, now instead of having a conversation around adjudicating them, holding them accountable, which you can do, but if you think about the power of a mitigation conversation, think about the ability to be a first mover. So we came into the ClearForce is kind of leading the change, or at least we're driving change in the conversation in the veteran suicide space. In that capacity, we're doing some pilots. We've done some data studies. So that particular line of business is not fully up and running. We're absolutely looking for organizations that are engaging with veterans that go, hey, this current model we've been doing is sub-optimized. And what I mean by that is this: if you think about veterans ourselves, what the organizations or the model is, hey, we're going to make it easier for you to come to me. So what we as veterans have to do is two critical things. We as veterans have to A, self-assess, and then B, ask for help. And we know that's hard. You guys could
Right.
probably talk to the rest of the show about friends of yours who are saying they're fine or might recognize they're struggling, but like, hey, I'm not going to show weakness, or I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to be a first
Yeah.
mover, right? And I just said the VA just released their 2023 suicide report, and it shows an increase in suicide from I guess it's 2 years old data, right? The VA never releases their data, is always lagging by 2 years. But I mean, the real point is go back to 20 years ago, 2 decades. The rate of the number of suicides there was around 6,000, and now it's 6,040 or 50. It's a steady 2 decade rise. I mean, we have good years and bad years, like a bouncing ball on a karaoke machine. But the idea is we really got to sustain change. And so we come in and saying, hey, we got to change that. Why should veterans have to be the first mover? And so here's our position. See if you guys call me out if I don't have this right. They got a phone number now. It's 988. That's really good. So it's easier for you to call me. Hey, we're going to bring more capacity and bring it closer, so it's easier for you to ask for it. We're going to reduce stigma and barriers so you don't feel bad coming to ask for it. We're going to, this idea of putting the burden on the veteran to be a first mover, we got to change that. I mean, you guys get it as small unit leaders. You don't want to wait for your soldier to come to you and say, hey, I'm struggling. Even your podcast, your whole concept to say you're not broken, right? You might need some resources, right? You might need resources, but why should I sit here with a ton of resources? Why can't I deploy them sooner? And I think to do that is where ClearForce is coming into space and going, hey, we can help you using our AI and machine learning technologies. We can use all of the privacy and compliance we baked into the platform. We don't just scrape big data. We laser in on the science of the social determinants of health. We work in the community-based data side of the problem, and we allow organizations in a commercial space to pick up on it. And some of the stuff we're now baiting in the veteran space is showing positive results as well. We can see and be first movers.
So you're kind of being more proactive rather than reactive is kind of what I'm.
You're nailing it. That's it.
Okay.
That's exactly right. We don't want to wait. And I'm sure you guys do this today. I mean, I bet if I asked you, you got some buddies of yours that are serving. Sam, I think you said you're still in. The concept comes out of that is, do you wait for them to knock on your door? Or are you trying to be proactively as good leaders? I mean, you were both NCOs, right?
Yeah.
You were probably always sensing your battle space.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, think about when you guys went on. I mean, I looked at your bios. You're both combat vets out of Afghanistan. I'll bet you a nickel that as NCOs, before you took your soldiers outside the wire, you were already miles ahead of the problem. You were thinking about, I got to shape the battle space so when my soldiers enter it, I've already set the conditions for my success. Right? I don't want to be in a movement to contact phase where I don't know what the heck's going on. I'm just going to stumble into the fight. We're going to go from there. You're trying to drive the enemy to react to you. And you do that by understanding the threat in the battle space. That same idea of forward leaning, that's what we're bringing into the veteran suicide space. Same concept. And the whole reason that works, and the reason you were NCO leaders, is your men trusted you. That's the coin of the realm that has to get underwritten, is trust.
Yeah,
Wow.
we did do. I mean, think about how much training we did. Our platoon
Yeah.
specifically was always filling in an empty day with training and nothing
Mhm.
crazy that was going to wear anyone out. But it was like, hey, like we could recover a vehicle fast.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
so that's being on top of it, the forward thinking, the proactive.
And not being complacent. That was the
Yeah.
biggest thing, complacency.
Well, especially for our job, looking for IEDs is the saying is complacency kills.
Yeah.
Or complacence kills.
And
And
you see that.
harp on it.
Yeah, but here's the thing too. I like your idea of training. Like I was earlier commenting that you're not going to fix it by training alone. But what we're doing with our veterans here, and you guys are a classic example of this. We're still in the fight. Like we're not. I mean, we're not necessarily racking up to go outside the fence line, or for me spinning up on a launch my bird. But the idea is that education. We're students of the art. And if the art is vehicle recovery, as you just described, you can get that done. Why? Because you're students of the art. You're paying attention, you're listening, you're growing, you're learning. And then if you're going to deal with an IED, you're students there. How do I avoid the enemy threat? What's that look like? Students of leadership. And so I think this idea for veterans is to stay engaged. And part of what you do, and my opportunity to be on the show, is to encourage veterans like ourselves, stay in the fight, stay engaged. So learn what you can, listen to these podcasts. These are helpful. There might be a nugget or two that has some value. Put that in your pocket and march on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of like if you don't, like for instance with suicide, like if you don't know what to look for, then you're not going to be able to identify those threats or the early signs.
Yeah, that's it. And I would say this, there's a couple ways to think about it. So from what we're doing with data analytics, as I mentioned, the VA and DoD reports for 2023 are both out. And what the data tells us, and if you look at the CDC, so this is science and data informed research. This isn't just Mike Hudson sitting out back, sipping on a cold one, coming up with good ideas. This is the science of suicide prevention. And what the VA port will tell you, you're at elevated levels of risk as a veteran if you're struggling financially, if you are homeless, if you have a substance abuse issue, if you're self-medicating, if you're had a relationship issue, if you've been arrested, if you're coming out of incarceration. All the things that we know that are pressure and stress that we've probably had to deal with or had buddies deal with. But as a veteran, in some cases, the underlying thing is they start to separate. They're no longer as connected. So that connecting file goes away. So to go back on it and say what ClearForce is doing today is using the science and the evidence that points to elevated levels of risk of suicide, the external pressures and stress. We're seeing those, we're bringing those into a coherent model, and we're allowing organizations then to say, hey, let's go get coffee with Mike. We're not saying, hey, Mike, you're broken, or Mike, you're going to commit suicide on a Thursday. What we are saying is within our population, hey, somebody should go get coffee with Mike today. Let's move him to the top of the queue. Because I bet when you were both leaders, the one thing you never had enough of was time.
Yeah.
I mean, so you probably had more soldiers than you had time to engage, and you probably only dealt with the ones that bubbled up to your top, right?
Well, that's how the saying goes. 10% of your soldiers take 90% of your time.
So my question to you would be, how do you identify those 10%? And normally your answer is going to be like, well, they do something, some stupid shit.
Yeah.
And next, voila, they're on my
Identify themselves.
Right. Yeah.
Self-identify, right? Idiot finds idiot, and the two of them, cause chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great thing because I think there was it the Tom Slattery with Sean Ryan? They were talking about how like usually like pretty much what you just said, how they were looking at the facts of like the suicides and how most of them either just had like a really bad divorce or something as a factor that
Catalyst.
Yeah, exactly, that they shamed themselves or they just didn't want to speak out about.
Well, that's it. I mean, what you're hitting on that is, and this is what I would suggest that in some cases, I used to do some targeting and refer to us as America's the best armed blind man. I mean, we have an amazing selection of weapons. We just don't always know where to put them. And so you think about what we're doing here in the veteran suicide prevention space. We have an amazing amount of people. I mean, the VA, state and federal, veteran service organizations, you and me, we want to help. right? We understand we all want to help. So I'm not poking anybody in the eye here. I'm just suggesting our current model is suboptimized. And what we need to do is rethink that. And we need to be way more agile. And we have to think about the use of data, not as the data is the solution. The solution is trust. The solution is privacy and compliance. That's the delta. We're awash in data. Anybody can say, I got this data. I saw it all the time. It's not necessarily the data. That close the circle is this idea of compliance and privacy. You need a technology conduit that locks all that down so that veterans know when they're participating that this organization has their back. Vice, they're just harnessing a ton of data to come up with something else.
Right. Well, could you touch on that a little bit? Like kind of what you guys
How it all works.
Yeah.
Sure. The way it's we got a couple different versions of it, but the net is this. So we start with the science and the evidence that points to, and you just let a few out, risk signals. What are the key risk indicators of an individual who could be struggling that align and map to an elevated risk of harm to self? So we start there. Those are key things. Like you could pick up on, you said, struggling a relationship, breaking up a relationship data. So what we can do then, or you would talk about an arrest, coming out of incarceration or being arrested, those are all challenges. So you see the VAs working these vet courts. We have all these silos of capacity that we just don't bring them together. What ClearForce is doing that is unique in the space is we're looking for those key risk triggers. We're then bringing them in, correlating them with other risk triggers. And then we do it. We also look at the environment of the area we're at. Is this a rural environment? Is this, so we did we're engaging with some individuals out there in the Virginia area, as well as some stuff out here where I live in Nevada. Is just sit there and say, we got to look at what's unique about that environment, start there, and then bring in we know about the risk of suicide, layer that on top, and then bring that in. We know about the demographics of the individuals, again, using data. And then what we do is we come up with those risk triggers that the evidence tells us, and then we find those in real time. We bring those into the model, and then we basically output, hey, this individual's at elevated levels of risk. So it's a dynamic capacity because it changes. Some people, when an event happens, so let's just say you get arrested on a Friday night, that might be the stimulus. You said, that's it, I can't take it anymore. And people process that incorrectly. We want to be able to inform those that want to help so they can put that individual at the top of their to-do list.
Okay. And so like who does it inform the key management personnel, or I guess who gets that?
Yeah, great question. So I should really clear ClearForce into itself. We're a technology company, so we don't provide direct services to veteran. That's an important component. Okay. So we do not ourselves provide. We are a technology company that anchors. Like I keep going back to what I think is the core of their own privacy and trust here. That's our real big value prop here, is how we think about that and how we weave the data into the science and the science back into the data to come up with the triggers. And then we move that. But for organizations that are using us today in the commercial space, exactly, we work for whatever that organization. So if it was a veteran service organization, a state or local VA, we would plug in there. And then what we would do is provide them a list of names consistently, like, hey, these are individuals that are in your population that are elevated levels of risk, and then allow that organization to use the capacity and capability that they have to deploy. And then we stay engaged with that to continue to tune. It's not a static. So we bring that in, you deploy, you come back, you engage, reset, and go again. It's a learning part of the application, and the machine learning aspect of that is also learning within the environment and the use case and the individuals we're supporting. Organizations, not people, because we don't do that.
Right. Okay. And so now you're kind of looking for organizations that have a big veteran employment or kind of okay.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, ideally, we've taken this, what we just talked about, and we've deployed that in some data studies. We've got back some really positive indicators that this is working. So we did that with in the data. So now we're looking to do some betas of this. Again, we're continuing to refine the model. So where we're at is, obviously, I would love to find organizations that go, hey, this makes a ton of sense. Let's partner with ClearForce and go out. That would be goal one. And so we've got a couple of those now, and I'm engaging with at this point. I would say we're in phase one of getting this off the ground. And then so phase two, if we continue to bring on more capacity, we can enhance what we're doing. And that's the goal, is to engage, use our technology and the patents associated with that to enter into this fight and to make a difference, to drive change. And we've seen, because the next question you said, well, how do you know it works? Because we know it works from our commercial application. So what we do is some anecdotal stories, because again, privacy is important. I won't give you any of the organization we support. We definitely don't see any of the people that are in the platform. We don't do that as part of the privacy component of this. But we help them during COVID, and that's where this idea really took root. Is like people were struggling financially. I mean, what you found was it might have been a two income household, and the spouse or partner got laid off or took a reduction in pay. Now they were struggling. So if the organizations were able to pick up on that, because what we do, uniquely in the financial space, is say, hey, we can see, because some of this data is all out in the open. It's public data. It's just not accessed in the right way. And we would say, hey, I want you to deploy some resources. That person would be able to come in. You could see events that associated with pressure and stress. The organizations then were able to have a very private personal phone call to the person and go, hey, Nick, how you doing? Hey, Sam, what can we do here to help? And then they deployed resources. Because here's the real thing. Organizations would want to retain you.
Right.
But so we help organizations retain the people. Find a reason. Everybody struggles now and again. That doesn't make you a bad human. But if you can deploy resources and retain them, that's a much better conversation. And then what the feedback was, not only did they, hey, thanks for helping. Then within the organization, it's like, hey, they really do care about us. We aren't just a widget that's moving around, right? So all of a sudden, that their culture that they write about is being reinforced by the idea that they're executing on it. So we help the organizations do that. And we underwrite, obviously, from risk. I mean, if you cross a red line, you got to go through that process. But we found that by moving left into the pressure area, we have way better outcomes in organizations in the commercial and government application using our technology. They have better outcomes.
I think that's awesome. I mean, and I bet, I mean, like you said, you can't talk too much about the individual cases, but I bet that also just provides a whole nother level of trust with the organization. I mean, like they're able to handle something so sensitive and show that they care, help them through a hard time and retain that employee. I mean, I bet that's huge.
It is. And I'll give you one example, anecdotal as well, to keep it, kind of the privacy intact. One of the organizations, defense contractor, and they had an individual who had a clearance. And as you know, from your back days, the 13 adjudicative guidelines drive that. And there are reportable requirements. So in one of those, we'll use a very simple example. We'll say it was a DUI. So the individual gets a DUI. That's a reportable issue. Our technology discovers the DUI because the way we built out our network and we curate a very select group of data, and we integrate and build out these modules that are really, really helpful. We were able to let the organization know the same day that happened. The individual then also being part of the team, because everything we like to do is with consent. Hey, we're doing this. This is why. Bring everybody on board. Nothing's shady behind the scenes. It's all out front. We're doing this. Here's why. Here's the participation. Setting a safe work environment. Everything is. Your participation is like uber important. Then they were able to reach out to the government and go, hey, one of our guys accidentally, made a mistake, and because they went to the government. And the government didn't discover it, hadn't known about it yet. We got in front of the government power curve. The government's like, oh, thanks for telling us. Guy stays on the job. We'll do some minor mitigation. Keep on moving. Had they waited, had the organization not had ClearForce deployed, they wouldn't have seen that unless the person came forward. And a lot of the times they don't. The government would have detected it eventually through their technology. And then that conversation would have gone differently. The government would have been calling you and saying, hey, one of your employees who's on a government contract violated the terms of his employment. They never told us. You didn't either. You got to let him go today. We're kicking him off site today. I want a replacement today. And oh, by the way, you just took a hit on our ability to trust you to do what you're supposed to do. So the organization counts, and that person stayed with the team, and it was a mistake. It was the first one, and everybody's engaged and moving forward in a positive way.
Wow.
I mean, that's right. That idea of being a first mover is important.
Yeah, get on top of stuff and get it handled before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess so for anybody listening, where would the best and we'll link this to in our show notes, but like where would be the best place for them to get more information about ClearForce?
Hey, I appreciate that. ClearForce.com.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our website, ClearForce.com. You can go in there and see, again, it's a fully up and running commercial company, all good, varsity organization. Again, I work with some really good people, and it's got a lot of veteran DNA in it. I mean, myself, I mentioned General Jones, he's on the board, but if you go through the list of people, they got, I don't think we have a soldier on the team. I'm thinking we got plenty of Air Force, I got some Navy tossed in there, Coast Guard. Yeah, I don't think we have a soldier.
Really? Okay.
I don't think we have a soldier. I think that's right. No, we don't. I know we don't have space com yet either. So let's be clear. We haven't got any space com yet. I
Right.
think there's still. No, that's good. No, I appreciate that. And again, yeah, it's a Virginia-based company. I should have led with that. I mean, we're in the Virginia area, but our technology is deployed, all through the U.S.
What I'm kind of curious as to some more of the parameters or the pieces of input that the system receives, like what all
Yeah.
it monitors.
That's it, and that's a great question. And so topically, they would refer to them as SDOH, the social determinants of health. That's a subset of them. But then, as I mentioned earlier, if you go into the VA report, they'll pull out homelessness, or they'll have a subcategory with that, a risk of homelessness. Those are discoverable events. And if you think about that, you just don't wake up on a Monday to be homeless, right? You go through a series of financial challenges, potentially relationship issues, substance abuse. There are normally drivers that drive you to a place of homelessness. Rarely do you it doesn't just like happen. Right.
Okay.
So we pick up on, right. So we can see some of the leading indicators of that. As an example, some of the public record data is out there, like liens and judgments and bankruptcies. These are all things that happen, are precursor events that you get to be concerned about. We can also start to see another big listed in both the DoD suicide report, prevention report, as well as the veterans, is financial difficulties. I just mentioned that. Then you look at the idea of law enforcement challenges. So you can see individuals who are arrested. You can start to see individuals who are getting, repetitive tickets. This is all data that is in the open. So we're not like looking behind doors here. And again, the individuals who participate with ClearForce in the program, we brief them up like we're here. This is being designed as a way to think about it like us as your virtual wingman combat buddy. So when you guys are both downrange, I can guarantee your buddies knew more about you than probably anybody else. I mean, you're what you do, how you right, and that's probably how you two guys, connected in. It's that idea of that gets lost in some cases when the individuals we find ourselves as an army of one. Not to make fun of Army recruiting slogans, but you find yourself as
you can make fun of their recruiting slogans, please.
I don't want to pick on the services because I actually am trying to engage with all of them. So listen, we're not going to talk.
Right.
If I went to the Air Force, it's like, aim high. Well, that's why you're always missing the damn target. So, but I mean, I'm sorry, a little humor there. But I think it's the idea of looking at these events that take place, court activities. And this court activities doesn't have to be necessarily connected to any type of criminal activity. The court activity could be, somebody suing you. So you find yourself under these again, discoverable, knowable pressure and stress. Sometimes relationship issues, that tends to be up there as well. Substance abuse, negative coping mechanisms, those can manifest in the public domain. So the idea is to see, those are kind of some of the leading indicators of what we would bring in to kind of hit what I would call your first bucket. But the CDC breaks them down. And that they think about suicide kind of in those cure buckets. But what I would add this too, we've been talking about risk thresholds. This is something I encourage all the veterans on here, those that are supporting veterans like us. The idea of connectiveness, super powerful. Like that's our superpower, if you want me. Veterans connecting with veterans is absolutely what we need to do. And in some cases, you'll see the VA just did, once a year call vet. If you recall, when we were coming out of Afghanistan, there was some real concerns that veterans were like, are you kidding me? That's 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears. We're pulling out of Afghanistan. And the way we pulled out,
I was pretty pissed.
Yeah, that was tough.
Yep. Yeah, me too. Right. So when you go through that, and like, really, that's it? It's going like that. But instead of trying to fight that, we were, and I put an op-ed on it, but it's like, hey, reach out to vets. This is when we need to connect in. Whether it's just, let's sit down and, get a cup of coffee and talk through this. But the message there was, hey, our service mattered. We did our job. We did our part. We made change. We set an environment of change, and peace out. What happens at the national leadership level, we can inform that by voting. But that's about the extent of that, right? But the point was, back to the key tenet here of connectedness. So being able to connect. And so part of what ClearForce does, if we see someone struggling, we include this concept of tribe, but this is idea of what we can do with the portal technology is allow veterans the ability to connect in, but point out who you should be getting a conversation. I mean, you two guys probably chat all the time. And I bet if you, went a week without talking, somebody like, hey, what's up? That's a sensor. That's odd. And then you couple that with, well, hey, he's going through a divorce, or, hey, you know what? He got incarcerated last night. He got picked up on a drunken disorderly, and now he's going to get out. And oh, by the way, he lost his job. mean, that's a lot of pressure and stress that
Yeah.
might not be fully understandable by everybody in there, because those are disparate data sets, right? One's coming out of a law enforcement, one's coming out of a court, one's coming out of the friend network. You start looking at maybe one's coming out of financial data. All of a sudden, you have disparate data in different areas. What we do is bring it into a single environment, correlate that, and then that allows us then to prioritize risk, and that's
Yeah.
the delta.
So is it monitoring your, bits of your financial, like your bank account and things like that? Because you said one's behind closed doors. So, I mean, obviously most of this is voluntary and then some of it's public, or is it monitoring social media as well?
So that's a great question, and those are all things that can be brought in. So this goes to the idea of the conversation of curating it. I mean, there's so much data out there today, but part of what we do when we deploy is we're right up front. Here's what we're using and why. Here's how this comes together, so you understand that. And again, we work in the consent space. Hey, this is what we want to do. We're coming in to be this virtual buddy combat, this combat buddy combat wingman, and we need you to be on this group. Here's why we're doing it. Our goal is to identify and support you while you're struggling, and then help organizations in time meet you where you are and deploy resources to help you course correct. That's the goal. So, but like when you said earlier, and we're not staring, we're not like looking at, that they just went down and bought a handle of Tito's. That we're not seeing it. That's not what we're looking at. Oh, look, they just they just bought something on Walmart or went to Neiman Marcus. That's not at all we're doing. We're not in that level of fidelity where you're trying. No, we're not seeing that.
Well, that's good, because I buy a lot of booze and bullets, neither with nefarious intent. So
yeah. What kind of rounds you buying?
Mostly 9mm and 5.56, but a little more and more 300 blackout, and on occasion when I'm feeling saucy, 10mm.
So somebody, I mean, what we're kidding about, I mean, I have a few firearms in the home as well.
Nice.
No 10. I've got some 9s. You know what I really picked up is that FN 302, the 22. That's my wife uses it. Like, I mean, I fire too, but I mean, you can go through 22 rounds like it's cool and not spend a ton of money. But it's it's nice. It's just teaching her how to punch out. So if we ever, I mean, we live in a nice area, but if someone, you never know, we got to pull
Never
it
know. Never know.
So just either punch out 2 round center mass, then it has a red dot, then go up. And if the person's still a threat, then use the red dot to put rounds where you exactly want them to go.
Yep.
Right. But that, I mean, again, just having the idea of going out, shotgun too, I think is the best. So we spend a little time on the range with the 12 gauge. I think the Wingmaster 870 is like classic. Can't go wrong with that weapon.
I pretty much use 12 gauge for hunting is my main use of it. Both of I only have 2, but they're both for hunting. And then most of all my defense stuff is 5.56 mainly just because I just buy the one ammo. And then, like I said, a little bit of 300.
Yeah, well, I mean, we grew up on that. I mean, those are I carried a Beretta 92F and
right.
Had a Colt M4. I mean, so you're kind of used to that. It's stayed in the fight. But while we're on weapons, just for 10 seconds, to transition and not to be the Debbie Downer, but that's something that we have to be heads up on, because firearms is the number one reason our fellow brothers and sisters is a weapon of choice to end their life. So being heads up on people at risk and separate them from the firearms, or encourage them to put a firearm lock, or to put time between the weapon and their decision making. Those are things we can do, as friends. Again, this is like trying to stay attuned. So really sensitive to the whole idea of firearms. Like, I think that's important. We own them. It's part of our ethos, our culture. Some veterans have many, some have none. But the answer is, though, the data tells us that unfortunately too many veterans turn to a firearm as a way to die by suicide. So we've got to be sensitive to that. And just as a little side note, I do stay engaged with some other companies out there. There's a company called Double Check Protect just coming online now. They're looking at suicide through firearms. They're also looking at bad actors who shouldn't get access to weapons doing that. So it's a really cool startup to start it. I do a little support for those guys. So I give them a quick shout out if you don't mind. Double Check Protect. It's
sure.
Look at Tim Kennedy. I'm sorry. He's an influencer. You guys probably know him from his MMA. Yeah. He's helping guide them. He's on there.
What was that called again?
Double Check Protect.
Double Check Protect. Okay.
So it's not what I'm doing with Clear. I mean, it's a separate outfit organization, but I think some of the work that what they're doing out there is really leading edge, and they're using some data technology as well to try to help in the veteran space, but also in the commercial space where we got too many people getting access to firearms doing bad things. So we got to basically help support what the NICS check's designed to do and make it better. So yeah, it's a good company with some really cool people. Trying to get a shout out to those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, something I was curious about too. So do you guys work with the VA at all, or do you get data from the VA, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, we'd love to work with the VA. I mean, I've knocked on the door a few times. We're
Okay.
like I said, we're pushing in. I'm persistent. If I'm nothing else, right, we're going to take that hill down and plant the flag. But it's 100% would love to engage with the VA. We've knocked on the door a couple of times. And I think some of the stuff that they're doing, again, we could help augment. Again, back to this, I think we can enhance the model that they're working off of. I think it's a bit sub-optimized. So I think we can make some change. So I mean, I told you earlier we started. If you look at the suicide numbers in this is VA data. So if you look at the VA data from suicides 20 years ago, 2 decades ago, what you see is a rise. So we have, like I said, we have a good year, we have a bad year. That's not the right metric. I mean, that's a tactical metric. How did we compare year to year? Important, sure. But what we really need strategically is to say and challenge ourselves. If after 20 years of doing the same thing, the numbers are still going up, we probably might want to try door number 2. I mean, and that's not to say that, we want to abandon anything else, but I know the VA can be more than a one ball juggler. So the idea of looking at different ideas and pushing, and they're trying to be, outwardly, and we're looking for opportunities to engage there for sure.
Right. Yeah.
But the data is not theirs. They don't own the data. The data is in the commercial space. I mean, the VA does have some data. There's something called ReachVet, which is, I think, on the medical side, where if you are being seen by the VA, they are using some of the Columbia Suicide Scale methodology. Then they're also looking at medical leading indicators associated with data that says, hey, this individual is a higher level of risk. And they see some success on that. We've talked to them about, hey, can we combine some more? We're doing really cool stuff in the community place. Combine that with some of the stuff you're trying to do with ReachVet. We've also said, hey, we'd be really cool to engage because the VA has this effort called Solid Start. And when you guys transition out, you may have already had, the VA intends to call you 3 times during that first year. It's a high risk area. We know the data says that first year transition. So yeah, we've banged in and say that'd be a really idea to augment that call, that it was more informed with not just the time, hey, this is your time window to call you. It's informed by, hey, these are some events and some things going on. Again, the goal of that is it's the veterans benefits side. So they want to make sure that you get all the resources. Well, what better than say, hey, why don't you call Mike today? He's struggling, can't make car payments, or, he's basically, the data says he's couch surfing. So he could probably maybe use some help in that direction.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what that is. I mean, we're super, like I said, we're super motivated about what we're doing. And as I said, we're just coming out of stealth mode, launching this thing, been doing it about for 18 months. So yeah, 100%. Anybody out there that's interested in having a conversation with us, love to do it.
I think what intrigues me the most about the whole thing is, granted, we kind of touched on, you said this at the beginning, so it's kind of a duh moment, but it's like, I guess after having had the interview, after you said this, it is now more clear how it is you are proactive versus reactive.
Yeah.
And how it's more, because a lot of Army training, which I've done at least twice, suicide prevention, is like the snowball is pretty far down the hill when you're even training to notice something and then intervene, versus like, hey, the snowball is just about to go over this edge here. Maybe we need to check on it to see if that's really where it's headed. And so it just, I guess it is so much more proactive than I pictured it being, in terms of the subtlety and picking up on that. And then, but not only that, but it's not the, with preventing other stuff, people like to prevent things, whether it's suicide or crime or whatever, but it's not the police rushing to their door because they, were laid up on the couch for a week. It's just the subtle check, hey, and which is so much less alarming and intrusive, and I think a more finessed way of handling it, which I think is more effective, is what I'm getting at. I think
you're nailing it.
People get scared of the, kind of like I was joking about, like, I buy a lot of booze and bullets, and it's like, people get worried about, well, what freedoms am I going to lose, which is a legitimate concern. I'm not saying it's not, but so I guess your handling of the situation, your management is tailored to the level of input. And so that's what's really intriguing me. That's what I'm seeing and getting out of this is, Nick was the forerunner for this interview, so he knew a little more than me. I had some curiosities about it, obviously, and I am pleasantly surprised as far as how the whole thing's executed.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, kind of what you were saying, like with suicide prevention, I feel like, do you remember when we were getting ready to deploy, we took MRT, Master Resilience Training,
Yeah.
and I feel like that helped me more than anything else. You know, what I mean, and that's more proactive than it is react. You know, it's getting you ready for the hard times you're going to endure.
Well, we've talked on the show about I had an experience on a drill weekend where it just came clear to me that it was one of those where they just, I don't want to go the whole story, especially because I've already talked about it before, but basically the Army was like, ooh, how can we take even more out of you? And I was like, I was pissed, which most people would be. But then I got extra pissed because I knew that certain soldiers would go further than just be pissed. And I was like, I told, our command team, I was like, this is why soldiers kill themselves. And I know and I don't even put it on the command team. I know they just push down what comes from higher, and a lot of the reserve. The higher you go, they're not reserve; they're full time, so they don't understand the relationship. And so, but then I thought about it, and I thought it's a bit unfortunate that someone's taking themselves out because of, well, I wouldn't even say I would say a large inconvenience. Which, granted, I'm mad, but that's the extent of my reaction to it. And so that's what got me thinking about MRT was maybe there's more to that MRT than I originally gave credit, because it's about you're fortifying the position before the attack versus
Right.
you're dug 3 inches in the sand as a fighting position, and then during the firefight you're like, oh shit, we better dig bigger holes. It's like, now we should have dug better holes earlier so that we could sustain the fight when it happened. And so that's yeah, totally, where it's like a lot of the battle I think has to be fought early on, but then the other side of the coin, of course, is that talking to, I think it was Dr. Yahoo we were talking to, and she said that, maybe it wasn't, whoever it was, the point is that a lot of people who have already gone through trauma join the military.
No, yeah, that was Dr. Hughes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So you're already, and not that it's an impossible fight, but just day one, private shows up from boot camp or for boot camp, and the odds of that person having trauma that is destabilizing is way higher, and you already have a battle, but that's not even going to really honestly get addressed. And I'm not saying that, which people who listen know I will not hesitate to talk shit on the Army or give my opinion about what it is or isn't doing well. I understand. I will give them that it is a hard thing to address early on, to just throw a private into, what is it, like it's several hours of MRT. MRT is longer. Suicide prevention training is like a day. Is the last time I did it was a day, and that was last fall, so about a year ago. God, over a year ago. Anyway, but MRT is days, and I talked to somebody about that. And I said, I think it's the more important of the two. Can we make it shorter but still effective? And they were like, probably not. And I was like, man, you're
hitting right on it, right?
What a concoction of variables and problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what we talked about is there's a model that has this component of awareness. It says, hey, we're going to make you aware of all that you can do. So we do awareness. So training is a subset of an awareness, right? We're making you aware of what's available to you. We're making you aware of risk signals. Here's what you should look for. That's something you got to have the training. Like, I'm not discounts they toss out the window, but suicide prevention is a 365, 7-day-a-week model. You're not engaging in it, right? You're doing it all the time. And I think that goes back to what we're trying to do here in this conversation with you guys, which you're totally getting at, is this idea of the early detection. Because the conversation that says, hey Sam, let's go get a coffee, because I'll bet you, call me out if I'm wrong on this. So I'm not, I've had to do some NJPs, and I'm not saying you guys have or Article 15s. And I bet you've been around, and probably some of your soldiers, unfortunately, found themselves standing on those footprints, and the platoon commander or the company commander is going to have to hold some form of an Article 15. I'll bet a nickel, back to my original bet, that by the time you talk to that soldier, there were opportunities for the command and the leadership team to engage sooner to change the outcome, but they weren't aware of it. The private or the sergeant or the colonel didn't ask for the help. So they tried to solve the riddle on their own. And to your point earlier, they got into crisis mode. So whether that's suicide, right? We see that a lot. And now you're doing some sort of just in time when you could have engaged with just that ounce of prevention a month ago.
Yeah,
and that's
right.
And it starts with, let's get coffee, because I go back to the coin of the realm, trust. If you show that what we're doing here is anchored on privacy and trust, we have compliance in here, we're using anonymization, we're doing all the right things here to protect you. But at the same time, we want to become in tune with you. We want to be able to help you understand that you're under some pressure. You might have it all nailed down, peace out, but let's get coffee. And then all of a sudden you have a conversation. Now the conversation is like, okay, well, we can deploy some resources. I mean, if someone came in, here's the answer. If they actually came and said, knocked on your door and says, hey, if a spouse lost their job, I'm having a hard time making rent, I need some help. We'd solve that riddle. It wouldn't be like, well, you're a dumbass. We would solve that, right? We would deploy resources immediately. We'd get things fired up. Chaplains would be engaged. Family services, we'd be moving. You get a Quad 6, which was a cash advance in the Marine Corps. Things would happen. And resources would move. But the problem is all those resources don't know because you didn't ask for it. That's what we want to do. Just get a cup of coffee. Start there.
Yeah.
Right. Start there. And it's not like if you move far enough left and you get in it, it's also some ambiguity. You might just get coffee and the soldier, or in this case, the veteran, just goes, no, I'm good. Okay. But they might share some other things like, hey, well, I can help you with that too. But what we just did there, this whole thing is anchored on what ClearForce is bringing to the fight: connectedness. We're connecting resources with people, and we're doing it where the people need it. And we're doing it on their time, and we're not waiting for them to come. Hey, I need help. We're breaking the model. We're changing it around, going, let's go to them, go where they are now.
Yeah, I think that's great, and that's something, like, through doing some of our interviews, we've found is, like, a lot of veterans, like you said, are kind of afraid to ask for not only help, but like even to use some benefits, because they feel like they're taking away from another veteran, or they either don't deserve it, or someone else deserves it more than them. And it's kind of that issue of, like, they have all these things here to help them, but they just don't want to go for it because for whatever reason.
They may feel like that, or they may say, I'm not really sure how I do that, or I know I got some training on that 6 months ago, but I'm not really sure what I do with that, because 6 months ago is a long time ago. I mean, you're right. But if all of a sudden you and I are like on this podcast, we sit down and start talking, and we start, shooting the breeze over coffee, and we start with, some funny stories. And the next thing we're going on this, and then you lead with, because the data informs, that person right now is struggling. Let's say they've had some off-base tickets below the threshold of causing the UCMJ to get engaged, but enough to go, there's a pattern there. And maybe there's some things behind the scenes we're just not tracking. And you tell your funny story of I'm empowering a leader, a dynamic leader, an engaged leader. I'm giving them some additional data sets so they can do what they do best. Remember, what's leadership? It's two key things. It's art and science, right? The art is how well you communicate. The science is the data and how you get at. That's your training, your continuous education. Art and science is what leadership's anchored on. I'm giving you the science so you, artists, can go paint that picture and help that soldier sooner, better outcome. March on.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Well, I love what you guys are doing, and
Awesome.
Yeah.
We are super motivated. As you can see, obviously, I probably leaked a little bit too much passion into this, 35, 40 minutes we've been going at it. But I'm super motivated.
No, we feel your passion for veterans, and that's what we're about. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. And so to veterans out there, like, hey, I mean, you don't provide direct service. I got to keep saying it. Don't call ClearForce, because we're not structured set up to do that. And I don't want you to pick up the thing and all of a sudden not get the answer you want, to find that, we weren't being helpful. We're not built that way. Mm-hmm. What we are built to do, though, if you're in the veteran population, hey, get your teams together and go, hey, if you work for a company, this sound cool, have a conversation. We're super motivated to take this to the next level. We need some support. So I appreciate the platform you guys are providing me today. So I'll give you a Marine Corps Simplify and an URA.
Definitely.
All right.
So I actually work at a company that we have a vet net. Like we started a veteran resource to try to hire more veterans. So I'll bring it up there and just see,
Sure.
if it goes anywhere.
Yeah, because the question we'd ask them, did you can tell them, is like, hey, how's your veteran retention? I mean, you hire more vets,
Oh, yeah.
you want to retain vets. So one of the keys, I think, to retaining vets is because we're used to working in partnerships and organizations. We want to be part of the team, right? We're not just some cog in a wheel. Can't keep me if I'm a cog in a wheel. You got to empower me to run in your organization. Then you got to have my back. We would be part of that conversation 100%. Hey, got your back. Our goal isn't to find a reason to let a veteran go. In fact, when I do interviews around suicide, one of the things I always end with, suicide prevention in the veteran space, what I always end with is like, hey, hire a veteran. Because we start talking about veteran suicide and some commercial organizations go like, well, that seems like risky. Why would I hire a veteran? Because they have PTSD, they kill themselves. Peace out here. Everybody struggles with this. Newsflash, right? Everybody does. And veterans, they'll bring a ton to the fight. You want them on your team. So yeah, good for your organization looking to bring them in. Then our support in that thing would be reinforcing your desire to not only bring them in, keep them on the team. Deploy the resources, keep them on the team, empower them to move forward, help you deploy the resources that you have set aside, and help you take veterans to the next level. Let's get it going.
That actually leads me to one last question that I think would be important. Is so for any veteran that's listening that has a company potentially that this would benefit, what would you suggest them? Like who should they
reach out?
Reach out to.
Hit our website, man. Yeah, I mean, if you hit I've thrown my contact data out there, but military guys have sense of humor, right? But no, I would say this: hit the website clearforce.com. There's a page right there where you can ask, reach out, ask a question, connect in, and then that we're super agile. 48 hours max. Someone's talking to you,
and just pass that up to management and.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, bottom line is when you set up a conversation. I mean, more than happy just to share ideas. Yeah, you got an organization like that, a veteran service organization you guys are working with down there, your company. Let's have that conversation. Here's how we can help. And you want to bring us on board? Let's figure out a way to get the yes.
Cool. All right. Well, great.
Hey guys, I appreciate the opportunity to do this. This was fun.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. We thank you for listening, and we hope you got something helpful out of this.
Right now, the best way to support us is to simply spread the word. If you know a fellow veteran who could use some resources to elevate their life, send them our way.
Until next time, remember to check your 0s, 5s, 10s, and 25s.